specific language in the trailer bills. All right. Yes, indeed. Public input on this? Yes, on any of them.
The recycled water they've been wanting to do.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Senators. I'm Bob Raymer, Senior Engineer with the California Building Industry Association. And as the Chair indicated earlier, CBI strongly supports water submeters for apartments. We support SB 7. We supported SB 411 last year, which bears striking similarities to this year's trailer bill. To the comments that were made, the concerns that were raised by Senator Nielsen, the trailer bill, while it does contain protections and limitations on certain aspects related to tenant rights and building owner rights, the relationship they have with bill paying and that type of thing, it does not establish water use consumption limits, and it doesn't establish penalties for overuse because overuse isn't identified. The most important part about the bill is that while it puts the mandate for the physical installation of these into apartments, the fact remains you're still going to have the master meter out in front of the project. By putting the sub-meters in the individual apartments, both the building owner and the tenants are for the first time going to have some actual information that they can use on a dwelling by dwelling basis in terms of water consumption. CBI likes the fact that while we put the mandate into the water code initially, the bill specifies that both HCD and the Building Standards Commission will develop building standards in their normal process, given their normal resources to do adoptions down the road. That's important because the building officials, the architects, and the subcontractors, namely the licensed plumbers, do not carry the water code around with them. They carry the plumbing code. So with that, unless you have any technical questions, that's...
Thank you very much. All right, Senator Nielsen.
Does that mean you, sir, your organization supports these trailer bills?
We support this trailer bill simply because it's identical to SB 411, which we supported last year. We support putting water submeters into new apartment construction.
But this is a whole lot more than that. So
No, that bill isn't, but you're saying that...
I'm just talking about the one trailer bill dealing with the water sub. I'm not talking about the other trailer
He's
bills.
just talking about the one.
820.
I'm sorry. This is just the water submeter bill. Thank you.
All right.
Madam Chair, Richard Harris on behalf of Water Reuse Association. We are in favor of 831 and 832. And let me just raise a point that we have always respected the CEQA process, and the projects have built through the CEQA process and review. There's maybe a technical point here that has not been made on the CEQA exemption for the treatment plants. And I don't know if you've seen the exact language. We saw it in the assembly side, and it's published. I don't know if you have. You were asking for exact language. We've seen the trailer bills, and they're on the website, and it's very specific there, for example, on treatment facilities, water treatment plants. We think that it's an emergency. We are in an emergency, and what the governor's asking for us to do is to realize because of that emergency, the only way to get new water right now is whether or not it rains or you build recycled water facilities. There's no other new water that any of us can bring into the system because that recycled water is already in the system. We just have to use it in another way, which means we have to give it another level of treatment. We think that this is a reasonable expectation. It's a reasonable effort for us to set that aside because if you gain 1 year because you did not go through some of that, or 18 months or 2 years, that's going to make a whole lot of difference when we're sitting here a year from now and it hasn't rained. So we think that's reasonable. The second point to be made is most of the larger projects that use the have any sort of federal money in those larger projects, whether it's a grant or a loan, including the loan amounts that we were talking about earlier. If that federal money is in there, you are going to have to do a level of review that is NEPA or CEQA plus, and therefore this exemption is not going to apply. Most of the larger projects and indirect potable reuse, that sort of thing, I don't represent the desalination folks, but that sort of, if they had any federal money, they'd have to have that sort of a review, and that would then take place. I think where these exemptions are going to get to are in those places where the people are needing to do some secondary level treatment projects, some purple pipe projects, if you will, that can be done quicker, sooner, done through rights of ways, and that's,
Thank you very much. Next, please.
Kyle Jones with Sierra Club, California.
Go ahead. Oh, all right. Senator Nielsen.
Senator Nielsen.
Richard, what does that mean? Now, do you support all of these water
We support those
bills?
two, Senator. It's 831 and 832. 832 is just the,
Okay, I got that. Now, you have no opinion on the others?
correct.
Okay. And I'll remind you of that when your people complain to me. How about what is your position in terms of surface storage? Understanding it's in the purview of the Water Commission now, but have your organization supported surface storage such as sites in Temperance Flat?
Our organization is
germane,
related to recycled water, Senator, and we've always appreciated your support of the recycled water industry and what we've tried to do. So that's
You're only
where
on
we go.
recycled. You don't
That's it.
support any more storage.
Not with the hat I have on standing here today.
So you assume we can conserve our way into the water future for our children and grandchildren?
No, I think we can recycle our way in.
I don't agree with you, sir.
Thank you. Let's move on, please.
Kyle Jones with Sierra Club, California. I just wanted to speak to two of the trailer bills today. First, in support of the sub-meter bill. Sub-meters allow for apartment dwellers to see how much water they use, allowing for greater conservation and the added benefit of individual leak detection per the units. Additionally, we think that it makes more sense for people to pay for the water they use and not just have the entire water bill structure be put into their rent. And then we also just wanted to mention 831. We are generally uncomfortable with CEQA exemptions, and particularly concerned about this one and in strong opposition with the language. I have it right here, and subdivision E allows exemption for anything that for a project that implements specific directives that the governor may include in a state of emergency proclamation. We support consolidation of small systems into more manageable units. We support recycled water. But we're concerned about whether or not these projects should have a CEQA exemption, given the type of construction involved. And again, on that subdivision E for any specific directive, the governor already used CEQA exemptions in his April 1st executive order. We're concerned that this is going to expand upon that power to something that isn't as related to drought mitigation as those exemptions were, including we share Senator Wolk's concern for the tunnels. We think it's just wrong to use this exemption to capitalize on a real crisis, to put environmentally damaging and potentially bad projects through without any mitigation or public discourse. And we urge you to reject that.
Thank you. Next, please.
Good morning, Chair and members. Brian Augusta on behalf of the California Rural Legal Assistance Foundation. Wanted to support two trailer bill items here. The first relates to submeters, which, as has been noted, is very similar to SB 411, which our organization has worked very carefully with the chair in prior iterations. We're very supportive of the bill that's been presented by the administration. I want to also address drinking water consolidation. We're very supportive of the framework that has been put forth by the administration. This would be a very important step forward to have the state play a role in consolidating systems where needed to continue to provide drinking water to folks who need it. There's still some work that needs to be done on the language, which we'll be looking forward to working with the administration and your staff on that, but we urge those two items to move forward. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Wendy Ritterbusch. I'm with the Association of California Water Agencies. We represent over 430 public water districts, some cities, and some community services districts that provide water supply throughout California. We're all tired. We've got drought fatigue. I think nerves are really frayed, and there's a whole bunch of significant policy issues in many of these budget trailer bills that I think, people are frustrated with at this time of year dealing with it. Understand that. Wanted to talk about 820, which is the Drought Expanded Local Enforcement Authority. Mr. Lawfer is correct. Our executive director, Tim Quinn, publicly expressed support for language contained in this, saying that it was the right move. And I think we're traveling into uncharted territory right now. We want to have all the tools available. Cities and counties have this. Many water agencies felt they were going to be in a legal limbo without it. But obviously, our water agencies would tread very lightly, very respectfully. No one wants to be running out giving $10,000 fines for this type of activity. So just wanted to comment on that. We also want to talk about 825, which is the drought consolidation bill. Frankly, we're not going to go through, and we had extensive comments yesterday in Assembly Budget Sub 3. I know this is going to go to conference, but I would just say that there's several issues with it. The first of all, that it's really not drought-related or drought-centered. We worked on a bill, SB 1130, last year with Senator Roth, which was very extensive. It took a lot of heavy lifting in Judish and EQ and several other committees to get it through. This is a very complex issue. It can't be done overnight. It doesn't lend itself to emergency-type situations, and we look forward to working through the issue in conference committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, please.
Danielle Blassett with the California Municipal Utilities Association. We have two trailer bills we want to comment on today. First is 823, the drought penalties bill. We support that. We definitely want to see those penalties go towards conservation activities. I also want to echo the comments of my colleague, Ms. Ritterbusch, on the consolidation proposal. We do have some concerns. We know these communities are running out of water. Our members want to be part of the solution. But we do think that the language in the current proposal is overly broad. Terms are poorly defined, and we want to definitely work with you all and the administration and the Water Board to make sure that it's a proposal that works for drought situations now, and then also to address the ongoing issue of consolidation and how our members can help.
Thank you. Next, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and members. Bob Reeb with Reeb Government Relations on behalf of multiple clients. I'd like to comment on three of the bills. Number 824, the drought monitoring reporting legislation. My clients appreciate the economic feasibility provisions in the bill. I would just share with the chairwoman and members that when we did the efficient water management practices legislation under the Agricultural Water Management Planning Act, we did exempt districts of less than 25,000 acres and provided that if state funding were made available for those districts to implement these various efficient water management practices, that they would do so. A lot of these smaller districts do use measurement by engineering, if you will, through kilowatt hours and pipelines and pumping, and they can achieve about 90% plus accuracy in measurement without installing actual meters. For example, Reclamation 2068 in the chairwoman's district estimates if they had to install meters that would achieve an urban standard, say a 98+% accuracy, it would cost that district a little over $100,000 to comply with this trailer bill. So you can see that there would be a rather significant financial impact on those types of districts. With respect to the drought water system consolidation legislation, we would associate our comments with Ms. Ritterbusch with Aqua, but also point out that if this law were to pass and the state board were to require consolidation, that we would want to see in this trailer bill some consideration for the district that would now be providing water supply for a new use. It's going to increase their use of water while at the same time they're under a state board mandate to conserve. So in some cases up to 36%. So in one hand, we'd be telling them to increase the use of water by helping out a neighbor, albeit on the other hand, they have to cut back. So we need to see some language in there that would recognize that situation. And finally, with respect to number 826, the drought submetering legislation, the chairwoman may have noticed that I haven't been dogging her around the building this year on SB 7 because you've taken care of my client's objections in your prior legislation, Mr. Fong's legislation. This trailer bill is not SB 7. It includes sections 538 and 539, which were part of your SB 750 from last session that mandate the water districts to require installation, but again tell them they have no responsibility for the submeters. Later in the bill, section 539 says there's no cost to any local government agencies except water districts, and then we would be precluded from collecting fees to do inspections and the like. So trailer bill's great without sections 538 and 539, and that would conclude my remarks.
Thank you very much. Next, please.
Thank you, Chair, committee members. Tyrone Buckley on behalf of Housing California. Want to speak directly to the drought submetering piece of the trailer bill language, 826. We're very pleased to see that a lot of the tenant protections that were in previous versions that match up with this bill, like SB 750 and SB 411, are still in the bill. And so we're very pleased to see that. We are concerned, though, that there was an exemption for low-income housing in previous versions, particularly exempting developments that had 25% or more affordable housing included. It's unclear to us why that didn't make it into the trailer bill language, so we would like to work with your office and interested parties in trying to make sure that gets back in there. The big issue there is cost. There's been a huge loss in affordable housing funding since 2008. We lost 69% of state and federal funding sources. And unlike market rate housing, we can't recoup that cost with our rents. So we would look forward to working with you to make sure that exemption gets back in. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I think we're working on that issue. Yes.
Madam Chair and Senators, Kyle Packham with the California Special Districts Association. I'd like to focus my comments on Trailer Bill 825. Given that the bill was posted on May 18th, we are still in the process of reviewing and vetting it. We do not have an official position. However, we do want to thank the administration for having had the opportunity to bring some of our districts before them yesterday, some of our districts that have been a part of the solution, that have success and experience with consolidating small water systems that are failing. And we believe we have a lot to offer and bring to the table. We have a lot of constructive comments on this trailer bill. We agree with the previous comments that there are significant definitional and potentially significant unintended consequences. The bill is quite broad. We believe it could pose some significant problems and would encourage a very thorough review, and we would like to be weighing in on that. We will be preparing a letter for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Good afternoon. Steve Cruz on behalf of the California Building Industry Association. We had comments on the groundwater, the CEQA exemption for groundwater. We're not opposed to the CEQA exemption on permits for new wells. That's sort of an immediate action. But there's a second part of the language in Section 2 that addresses an exemption for ordinances adopted related to land use decisions, including like a temporary moratoria. And so as we see that, you'd be exempting those decisions that are made sort of on a long-term planning basis for housing that are sometimes 10 years out, that could actually have the opposite effect of if you're in a job-rich Bay Area, for instance, and there is and there's a CEQA exemption and there's a move to halt new development in one area, then you're actually sort of furthering commute time. Just an interesting issue. I'm not sure that's what intended. I heard Senator Pavley sort of speak about it, but we do have, we're going to be meeting with the administration next week to talk about it, but I just wanted to flag it. I'm not sure it's intended, but that's the way it's written currently.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, please. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Kathy Cole with the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California. First, want to speak to Trailer Bill 824. With all due respect to Senator Nielsen's concerns, Metropolitan is in support of this particular trailer bill. We think it's important to get a handle on the amount of water being diverted from the system, when it's being diverted from the system, so we can make sure we protect flows for fisheries, legal users of water downstream, and it is existing law, and we believe this is closing some of those loopholes. Also, 825 on consolidation, I adopt by reference some of the comments from my colleagues. Also want to urge the committee to consider building in some liability protections, similar to what was in SB 1130 Roth, which was approved by this legislature last year and signed into law, that had some good liability protections for the agency receiving the struggling system. And then certainly last but not least, we also support 831. This could be a very important tool, particularly during the drought, for bringing customers online for recycled water that's produced. The hookups from the producer to the customer are one of the obstacles we see on expanding the use of recycled water, and we think this is a tool to make that happen. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Good afternoon. Anya Lawler on behalf of Western Center on Law and Poverty. I just want to comment on the submetering bill. As I think you're well aware, Madam Chair, this is an issue that Western Center has been working on for about 20 years, and the trailer bill reflects the compromise that was reached late last year. Yeah, it's not perfect, but it's a good compromise, and we're happy to be in support. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members. Glenn Farrell with the San Diego County Water Authority. as water managers throughout the state are gearing up and beginning to implement programs to achieve the very aggressive mandatory water use restriction targets that have been established, we think it's important to continue to provide all the tools available, and that's why we're supportive of Trailer Bill 826, the submetering, to provide those pricing signals to multifamily residents to help advance water conservation ethic. At the same time, we don't believe that water conservation is the solution, the sole solution to the drought, and we believe that local water supply development is particularly critical to help reduce dependence on the Delta, help create some regional self-sufficiency, insulate communities from the drought, and that's why we're supportive of Trailer Bill language number 831. Particularly the recycled water provisions. We're supportive of the direction of that particular trailer bill. We think there's some tweaks that need to be accomplished to help ensure that potable reuse, advanced treated recycled water, potable reuse projects are continue to be eligible under that as well, but we're supportive of the direction.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the committee, Roxanne Miller, representing the mayor, city council, city of San Jose. San Jose, along with Santa Clara, are the joint operators of the San Jose Santa Clara water pollution control plant, serving much of the South Bay. And we are here today in support of 831, particularly to promote and continue to expand for public benefit our water recycling program. Thank you, and we look forward to working with you.
All right, you've been here for 5 minutes.
He's used up his quota for the
You
rest
have your
of the
quota
year.
for the rest of the year. That's
Yeah.
right.
You didn't ask for comment on the budget items that were done prior. Could I just raise a point with you very quickly? Proposition 1E and on the expenditures that have to require on appropriations.
We didn't get to.
Under the Department of Water Resources, where we're pushing the rest of 1E money out.
We're not
on Central
there
Valley
yet.
flood.
Okay.
I'll call for public comment at that point. Thank you. Maybe. All right. Thank you very much for all of that, and those of you who gave good public comments as well. All right, let's move on to the Central Valley Flood Protection Board. Who do we have? Welcome.
Madam Chair.
Welcome.
Leslie Gallagher, the Acting Executive Officer, and I'm joined here today by my board president, who some of you may know, Bill Edgar.
Okay, we had a hearing on March the 19th. We held it open. We wanted some action to move forward on a long-range funding plan quickly. This has been on the board for a while, so if you'd like to speak to that and the recommendation, that's fine.
Is this one? Senator Wolk, members of the subcommittee, for the record, my name is Bill Edgar. I'm president of the Central Valley Flood Protection Board, and I'm here before you today in support of the proposed budget for the Central Valley Flood Protection Board. You have the material that the staff has already provided you regarding responsibilities, our current budget and funding and so on, and I won't dwell on any of that. Suffice to say, we are proceeding on the trajectory that you have set forth in terms of newer responsibilities and carrying out our duties and responsibilities in a way that in which our goals are essentially public safety and efficiency. Now, with respect to your action on March 19th, you asked us to prepare a financing plan that is not reliant solely on the general fund and other bond funds. And in response to that request, the board held a public workshop and reviewed alternative funding and authorized our executive director to undertake a number of studies. She reduced that in writing and sent you, I think, a 4 or 5 page letter, which I signed based on that. At this point, we've identified 2 alternative funding sources, which most of you are familiar with. One is to create a fee structure for permit issuance and management. Currently, the board has no specific authority to charge fees for the cost of issuing permits, nor may it charge permit applicants for the cost of outside specialized services such as hydraulic studies, geotech studies, and so on, which are needed by the board in order to process a permit. We do have reimbursement authority for CEQA preparation, but not for these other engineering issues. The board, the second area is assessment district financing, and the board does have existing assessment authority, as you're probably aware. However, we believe, and our council has advised, that it would probably require an update, legislative update, to utilize it. We think the authority seems to apply only to capital projects and not ongoing operations and maintenance, which I think your subcommittee directed us to look into. So that's one issue that we would take up. The board is aware of other agencies who are working in assessment districts or discussing assessment districts for funding of their own. Examples are the Delta Protection Commission, of course, and the Department of Water Resources. The board strongly believes that we really ought not to do assessment districts in a vacuum. We ought to be coordinating and collaborating with these other areas to maximize the use of existing resources, coordinate the use of consultant contract efforts, and, if necessary, collaborate with these other agencies on the request for additional resources to justify any ultimate assessment that may be recommended. But in summary, Senator Wolk, I believe that board's process will include a determination if alternative funding mechanisms will create a more viable and safer system. It's our hope that this effort will be supported by the administration and the legislature to ensure the board has authority and resources to fulfill our mission. We have reviewed your staff report, and although the timeline is short for a report back, we certainly will do everything we can to meet that requirement.
Okay, good. All right, we will be separating the items. Is there any public comment on this? And this is on the $800,000 for the Permanent Physicians General Fund and the $600,000 Prop 1E.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Apologies for jumping up earlier. With the California Central Valley Flood Control Association supports the staff recommendation and the work of the Flood Protection Board with respect to its commitment to work with stakeholders with respect to funding. We've spoken with the members of the subcommittee or staff on this. The one question I did want to raise, which I've raised in various forums, it's a relationship between Proposition 1E funding and Proposition 1, where the members will recall that Proposition 1 repurposed $100 million from Proposition 1E for purposes of expenditure under Proposition 1. The question I put to various staff in the building is, did that obviate the need to appropriate the Proposition 1E funding by July 1 of 2016? And I haven't received a response. I think it would be helpful if Legislative Council could look into that, because if it does not, then we don't want to lose sight of that $100 million from Prop 1E if we don't have it appropriated by July 1, 2016.
All right, thank you for raising that. All right, further public comment? All right, hearing none, let's separate the items as per requested. Let's push the first item 1, which is the $800,000 general fund for new positions. Is there a motion?
So move.
All right, it's been moved by Senator Nielsen. Please call the roll.
Senator Wolk?
Aye.
Senator Nielsen? Aye. Senator Pavley?
Aye.
All right, 3-0, that passes. Let's now do item 2 plus the supplemental reporting language at the bottom. So is there a motion?
So move.
All right, it's been moved. Please call the roll.
Senator Wolk?
Aye.
Senator Nielsen? No. Senator Pavley?
Aye.
All right, that is approved, 2-1. Let's move on to...
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Let's move on to flood safe. I believe that is Who's on? Mr. Cowan?
January's governor's budget proposed about $1 billion for flood safe proposal. $660 million of that proposal was accelerated through AB 91. There's 2 remaining pots in that flood safe that we had proposed in governor's budget for system-wide improvements and state operations that still need to be decided by the subcommittee. We've also proposed a number of technical adjustments to align with AB 91 that would back out the governor's budget proposals that we accelerated through AB 91, so that's a technical adjustment. And we also have, I believe those are the 2 proposals before you here.
All right. Any comment on Mr. Reeves' concerns about the statement about the 1E appropriation? Should probably take a look at that.
Excuse me?
Any comment on Mr. Reeves' concern about the 1A?
The $100 million that was repurposed for Prop 1. Yeah, I would defer to Ledge Council on that, but I think the administration's position on that would be, since it was sent to a subsequent vote for Proposition 1, that it would have extended life beyond the appropriation deadlines in 1E.